Good morning, everyone. It's 1 minute after 9. So I hope everybody can hear me quite well. So we can start our Winshuttle User Group event. Okay. So for the people who don't know me yet, my name is Jamie Broeren and I'm the Winshuttle account manager within in Ctac. But a lot of people, they don't know me. I spoke with them via email, via phone, or they recognize my face. So that's really nice. So this is our first remote Winshuttle user group. So that's quite new because normally we have the Winshuttle user group twice a year on our location from Ctac in Den Bosch. So this is totally different, but we are really, really happy that we have the Winshuttle user group session today. And we have over 100 registrations, so that's really, really good. It's snowing outside still over here in Brabant, in the south of the Netherlands. So maybe it's good that it's a remote session because I think a lot of people couldn't drive to the office today. I will explain you how all the session and everything is managed. So everyone is on mute, and because we are with a lot of people, please stay muted. And please turn off your camera. And that's because of the network, because we are with a lot of people in one session. If you have a question or you need any assistance, Elke is there. Elke is behind the help desk in the chat. So you can just send her a chat with a question. And if that's not working, you can also call her on her phone number, which you can see in your screen. So we will start with a session from Mark Hallam. A lot of people also know Mark already because Mark is working for Winshuttle for many, many years. And Mark will give us an update about the Winshuttle business worldwide. After Mark's session, which will end on 9:30, we will go immediately to Gerben van Ravenstein from Lumileds. And we are really happy that Gerben is there, showing us why Lumileds chose for Winshuttle, how they use Winshuttle, what the benefits for Lumileds are, and what they want to do with Winshuttle in the future. And that session will end on 10 o'clock. And for the sessions from Mark and Gerben, if you have any questions, please ask those in the question box because the time frame is quite short. So if you put your question in the question box, we will collect those and we will answer those questions directly after the knowledge sessions. So in the last 15 minutes of the user group today. And if there are some questions which we can't answer today, then we will come back to you later on. We have the wrap up at 11:45, so we will answer those questions right then. But as I said, just add your questions in the chat. So Mark, if you're ready, yeah, then the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Jamie. Can everyone hear me? Jamie, you can hear me?
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you, Jamie. Good morning to you all. And thank you very much for joining us on this Dutch user group, Winshuttle User Group. My name is Mark Hallam. I'm the Vice President of the Winshuttle EMEA and APAC region at Winshuttle. And I'm based, usually based in our Wimbledon, London office, but since March last year, I've been based at our home office about a mile south of that. And as you can see here, we have a global footprint that serves our global customer reach around the world, and including our Dutch and Belgian partner Ctac. And I think from a Winshuttle standpoint, most of us are distributed from our home offices. It's also snowing here in good old cold London. So coming to you live from London. So when Jamie asked me to present a corporate update about Winshuttle, I thought long and hard about even mentioning 2020. I think I speak for all of us at Winshuttle, certainly, that we're happy to see 2020 in our rearview mirror. And I think it'd be remiss if we didn't, though, at least acknowledge some of the twists and turns and the challenges that we experienced last year. Like every company on the planet, Winshuttle had to pretty much pivot overnight our global delivery and our services and our support and our go-to-market strategy from being in person and live to pretty much everything being delivered online. And we had to adapt and learn how to communicate and support our customers' projects and initiatives under very, very trying circumstances. And customers and prospects were in the same boat. Everyone had similar pressures to cope with at home and in the office. And it was a tough old year. But one thing that I think from a positive standpoint that we acknowledged and saw in our interactions last year is that communication and engagement became a lot more personal. And Winshuttle does have a culture of people before business, and it's something that we are particularly proud of. And we saw that elevate in our engagements last year. We led pretty much every conversation with how are you, how are things going, how are you coping, how's the office, how's home, before we go to talk about data management and process automation. So that's one thing little anecdote I thought I'd share with you. It's a positive side to last year. Yeah, hopefully we can carry that on in the future and hold that close. I think it's a good thing. In terms of how we managed last year, although it was a tough year at a personal level for a lot of people, it was a very good year for us at a business level. So I'd like to share some of the highlights with you. We measure our customer satisfaction and engagement every year. Every time we engage with the customer, we send a survey out, and we managed to maintain a 99% customer satisfaction score through 2020, except for 1 month in March where we went from an office-based workforce to a distributed workforce where we dropped down to 98%. And then back up to 99% through the year. So that was a very positive sign for us that we could execute under these circumstances and look after our customers in the way they expect us to. We also measure our Net Promoter Score. If you're unfamiliar with NPS, Net Promoter Scores, it's an index ranging from -100 to +100, and it measures the willingness of customers to recommend a company's products or services. And it's used as a proxy for measuring customers' overall satisfaction and customer loyalty to a brand. And in the software industry, the benchmark for good is 31, and we scored 45, which we're very proud of. So the combination of our customer satisfaction, our Net Promoter Scores, kind of underscore that we are paying good attention to our customers, and long may that continue. Our online community last year grew to over 3,000, which is a fantastic result. I think there's a lot of goodness in our online community. If you're not a member, I'd absolutely recommend joining it. It's where like-minded individuals ask questions around how they're using Winshuttle, how they're leveraging the platform that they do have. Similar roles, you can look at industry sectors and different companies and see what they're doing and share. And when our customers talk to other customers, that's when the magic happens. It's a really good community. So I'd really encourage you to join that. We have over 30 international, user groups. And today we're at the Dutch and Belgian one with Ctac. So thank you for joining us today. A lot of goodness happens when, as I said, when our customers are engaging with customers and sharing, and we'll hear from Gerben at Lumileds today as well. So it's a really good forum to understand how to best leverage your technology. We added 139 new customers to our community last year, and that's amazing. We typically add about 200 to 220 customers every year. Last year was a COVID year, and we still added 139 new companies to our installed base. And if you're one of those customers who are joining the user group for the first time, welcome to the team, welcome to the community, and we look forward to a long and prosperous future together with you. So thank you for that. We launched 2 new products last year. We launched the Evolve platform, which is our process orchestration platform, and our Studio Manager, which is a governance platform for our Studio user community. And both of those was received very positively. Additionally, we developed a lot of new product and customer experience improvements last year. So it was a very positive year in all. And from Winshuttle, from myself and the team, we'd like to thank you for your support and your engagement last year. And we're looking forward to a very positive 2021 together. So I've got a slide here with a kind of abbreviated product roadmap for you. We break our product roadmap into 2 different time horizons, the plan of record and plan of intent. Our plan of record are those projects that engineering have committed to a release date and the product feature scope is set. And then our plan of intent is essentially the next set of projects that are coming through where we're still defining the requirements and refining the scope of work that's going to go into those releases. In 2021, we're expecting 2 releases this year, the first one coming in May and the second one being driven by SAP's S/4HANA 2021 release dates. In February, we're going through our SAP certification this month, and we also have some migration tools that we'll be releasing to customers for self-service migration from the foundation platforms moving to Evolve and from the user governance platforms moving to the Studio Manager platforms. There are 2 highlights that I'd like to kind of call out on the May release, which is pretty exciting. A lot of customers have asked for this functionality. So if you are one of those customers, this is good news for you. The Evolve Portal Framework is a new technology, which is an add-on to the Evolve platform, which essentially enables a solution developer to build their own portals internally or externally facing. So for example, you could create vendor or customer or partner portals. And then additionally, we have the Evolve Digital Access API, which essentially allows Evolve to be triggered, or an external system can trigger an Evolve solution workflow. So for example, a CRM system can have data input from the CRM users and then feed that into a Evolve solution workflow web form that can route through the organization and into SAP following the appropriate approval processes. So we've made a lot of development progress in the last 2 years, particularly last year as a distributed workforce. I think the team did amazingly well. We're making a lot of investments in helping companies with their digital journey and helping them with their digital transformation efforts as it relates to data and processes. And the world has gone digital. There's nothing new about the statement, and the pace at which it is digitizing is increasing. Technology has changed the way we do business, and new business models are increasingly relying on data and digital processes. The current market conditions, certainly last year, we saw a lot of organizations that we engaged with sharing that they've recognized and acknowledged the need to move faster in their digital transformation efforts. And there's a heightened urgency associated to that. And that's supported by the industry analysts. And this example from KPMG's COVID-19 survey found that 80% of the business leaders that they surveyed wanted to accelerate the digital transformation efforts since the pandemic. And that's primarily the primary initiative behind that is essentially operational resilience. So it's a very important aspect to it. And essentially it comes down to data and processes, and data and processes are inextricably linked together. You can't digitize complex processes without making sure that your data that you collect is of the highest quality. And similarly, you can't make sustained improvements in data quality without ensuring that you can digitize those processes. So the fact that you need to address both process and data makes it a really challenging initiative to digitize and manage on traditional platforms. So many of the processes are still manual and slow, even in the largest of enterprises. And digitizing data intensive processes like these is where Winshuttle really excels. And our future investments and our vision and our focus is to help organizations with their digital transformation journey, helping them manage their data and the processes related to their organization, helping them make real headway and progress in that in an agile, business-focused way. And the 2 platforms that we're kind of our flagship investments are going into that side to support this initiative are essentially in Evolve and our Enterworks MDM platform. And Evolve is our flagship automation platform that is the new generation platform following on from our foundation platform. Our foundation platform is an absolutely fantastic platform. We have many, many hundreds of companies that are on that platform, and it's still a fantastic platform. Evolve is the newer flagship platform that's designed to automate your strategic data processes that power your business. It's designed for business teams, and it combines enterprise-grade workflow and automation and data stewardship with the SAP integrations that you expect. It's ideally suited to automate complex business processes like product launches, customer launches. It does really, really well with vendor master, customer master, material master setup in SAP, and essentially the collection and the movement, the validation of data through your organization into your SAP systems. We launched this at the beginning of last year, and we have over 50 companies who have invested in the Evolve platform, either as new companies, new customers coming onto the Winshuttle community, or as upgrades from the Evolve or the Studio platforms that we have. So yeah, 50 new customers have joined that, which is a really good result. We've had very good feedback about the technology and the look and feel and the capability of the technology. From our partner ecosystem as well as our customer ecosystem. So really good progress there, and we'll continue to invest and grow this technology out. And the other side of that, from a platform capability, is our Enterworks Platform, which is a multi-domain MDM hub that is used to create and maintain high-quality golden records for your master data and other business critical data. This Enterworks platform excels absolutely brilliantly in product information management, or PIM. And like the Evolve platform, it's designed for business teams and uses a highly flexible data model, and is a really good mix of automation, data quality, enrichment, and syndication capabilities. And it's as I said, it's a multi-domain platform that is really, really strong in product, the product domain. And so a lot of our use cases are PIM. Gartner no longer uses the PIM as a quadrant. We're in the Gartner quadrant for MDM, and we've moved up in the Gartner quadrant this last year. It was the new Gartner quadrant was released this month, I believe, and we've improved our status there, and we're also leaders in the Forrester Wave with this particular technology stack. And it is really, really strong in product, so PIM, and it also handles multiple domains in a single instance, which is a really strong capability. So essentially, it's a platform that enables companies to take data in from any source system, including your ERP and your CRM system, and collect it into a central hub that then allows you to validate and ensure that the data performs as it should from a data quality perspective, and send it through an enrichment workflow, and then use it and syndicate it out into all your other systems that consume your data, your websites and other partners, etc. So those are the two platforms that we've put an extraordinary amount of effort and engineering and development into over the last 2 years, and hopefully you'll see that coming through and enjoy that. And essentially, that will enable us to continue to execute on our vision, which is essentially to help business teams and business users make an impact at scale in this digital world, help them with an agile platform that is easy to use and very well supported, so that they can make a difference in their business. They understand the data, they understand the business processes, and our job and our technology focus is to help those types of organizations, those types of teams, make a real difference in the way they interact with their SAP data and their business data and business processes. So thank you very much for listening to me today, and for joining us at the Winshuttle User Group. I really appreciate that. We at Ctac appreciate that too. So we hope you have a good day. I get now to hand over to Gerben van Ravenstein, who's the Director of Enterprise Data Management at Lumileds, who will share their journey with you on the foundation platform and the success they've had. So Gerben, over to you. I get to stop sharing my screen now and hand over to you.
Thank you, Mark. Can you confirm, Jamie, you see the slideshow?
Yeah, we can see it.
We can see it.
Thank you. So before I dive into the Winshuttle solutions, we have a bit of background on our company. So Luminance is a global lighting solutions company. We help customers around the world for their products so they can have a competitive edge in their market. We produce in multiple markets. What you might see often is the LED for illumination that you see in normal light solutions. Also our former company, Philips Lighting, is one of our customers getting those products from us. LED specialty, that is more in your mobile phone. And a big market is automotive, both OEM, LEDs and old-fashioned car bulbs, but also in aftermarket, the product that you get in the car stores. We exist for over 100 years, not as Lumileds, but as part of Philips, where we were divested from several years ago. So already a long journey that also gives some complexity in the business, and I'll get to that slightly later. We have a global footprint, 10 factories and multiple commercial organizations. And that also makes it often needed to have a tool that helps us orchestrate the data creation process in an easy way. And it also sometimes triggers requests from the business to help facilitating some of their complex business processes. So we have a global footprint in that sense, which needs support from all the different functions. To set some context a bit on how we are set up with data management in Lumileds. We have a global team, 10 people in Poland and a few in the Netherlands. What we've also done is there are 2 dedicated people to help with mask changes and automation. And the reason is that we noticed that to do mask changes, it can be in any domain. You need a lot of SAP knowledge. And the same you need if you want to build scripts or solutions in Winshuttle. So that is key. If we have 2 dedicated people in our automation team, they know a lot about SAP. And that is even more important than knowing Winshuttle, because knowing Winshuttle is something you can relatively easily learn. But knowing everything about SAP takes a bit more time. The global team also has a role in maintaining global data. So that is one of the things that you will see back in some of our solutions. We maintain all the finished goods cross-company, all the customer and vendor master, transfer pricing, sales prices, sales views, BOM and routing. So it's a mixed bag. It really depends per factory what is in scope. We still have a mixed bag of a request process. Some are still through Sharepoint with Excel templates. And more we try to build solutions on foundation with forums and workflows. And I'll show you some screenshots of our solutions later on. And to give a bit of a context on the volume, in 2020, we managed in the global team 6,000 data requests, the majority through Winshuttle. 2,500 vendor requests, more than 1,000 customers. Just to give a bit of context on the volume we're processing and why we are automating things. So a bit on why and how we are using Winshuttle in Lumileds. First of all, we already know Winshuttle for a long time, mostly the old-fashioned tool with Excel for mass loads. Within Philips, we often had line moves where production was moved from one factory to the other, or merger and acquisitions, and then a lot of data needs to be loaded and cleansed. And in Philips, we were using Winshuttle already for a long time to help loading that. When we separated from Philips, we had to replace certain solutions and build our own IT infrastructure. And at that moment, we looked at foundation, but also looked at SAP MDG. In the end, we've selected Winshuttle. The main reasons are mentioned on the slide. As a big difference, if you're looking for a data repository, MDG can store data, Winshuttle Foundation, not really. But one of the big disadvantages we saw in MDG is it can only manage master data. And we also needed a solution that orchestrates processes for transactional data like journal voucher. And MDG cannot do that. So that was kind of a showstopper already for MDG for us. And also the way to maintain it, it's SAP MDG is SAP. So it's pretty rigid. It needs transports. Where Winshuttle Foundation is relatively easy, which is also a risk, and I'll get to that. because the more flexible a tool allows you to be, the more strict you need to be yourself to avoid it becomes a mess. We use multiple Winshuttle solutions. Of course, still the old-fashioned transaction scripts for mass loads. For those, we build ad hoc scripts and we run those from the data management team. We don't provide them to the business because those mass loads can easily result in a mass mess if you don't know what you're doing. What we also do more and more is that we embed specific Winshuttle scripts in an Excel file, and we hand that over to or the master data team, but also to business teams, like in the order desk. And then from Excel, they can run that Winshuttle script, which is embedded, and they can only run that script because that's the only script we provide them. And that helps them make easy updates, for example, to lead times or due dates, which otherwise would be quite painful to do it all manual. We also have foundation solutions, of course, where we do load the data also in SAP. For example, vendor and journal voucher. Of course, we need a close cooperation with the business because all the business rules need to be reflected. And most of those solutions are run by data management team. So in the end, we run the scripts from the solution, but some are also fully run by the business, for example, for journal voucher. And important to mention there is we have 2 SAP kernels. And with Winshuttle, we can make that, let's say, hide that towards the end user. So if they need a vendor, they don't need to worry so much where they need it. They just say they want a vendor in which company code, and then we'll manage that both systems on the backend remains in sync. And Winshuttle acts like as an umbrella, let's say, on top of those 2 kernels. Where we also use Winshuttle Foundation for is if we don't load into SAP, and that sounds a bit strange because Winshuttle is meant to load in SAP. But we want to have a one-stop shop for our customer base, and they make requests in Winshuttle. For those requests, they need SAP data, so we do have query scripts that fill the form. But we still have certain custom-built solutions in SAP which we don't want to load with Winshuttle because we can upload a file. And then we use Foundation to fill the form and validate all the business requests. But in the end, the loading happens manually via a Z transaction. But for the user, it's still in Foundation. So we also have Foundation solutions that don't load in SAP. Well, when do we use which solution? So mostly we use the Excel with the embedded script if it is a limited group of people who are using it. So 1 person or 1 team. Relatively simple data, no business rules. It's for the user easier to work from Excel instead of going to a forum and fill there all the data. So this is, let's say, for order desk people, or let's say change request a delivery date or pricing on purchase orders. We implement a real full-blown Foundation solution if multiple teams are involved and where you really have benefit of a workflow, where you need an audit trail for approvals. But also if you have more complex business rules, you don't want to program them all in Excel with macros or stuff. In that case, it's easier to build that in Foundation. And that's where what we use for Vendor Master. We're going to build it also for Customer Master and for Journal Vouchers, where especially for Journal Vouchers, the approvals are important. So depending a bit on the request, we use a different way of building a solution with Winshuttle. A bit on volumes, on how much Winshuttle scripts we have been running last year. The vast majority is Journal Voucher. During month-end close, we run 13,000 scripts, and on the peak day, 3,500 scripts, which is a lot. So we had to fine-tune a little bit the workflows to make it still processing. Of course, we can make the servers bigger, but we wanted to work with what we have at the moment. So Journal Voucher is really a huge volume. And for the rest, it's vendor and mass loads. And then the right circle is all the rest, a bit of purchase order, routes, customer material info records, and so on. So it's a bit of a mixed bag what we use Winshuttle for. But volume-wise, it's really Journal Voucher. And that also makes the days around month-end close a little bit tricky. And there shouldn't be issues then, because then we are 3,500 scripts behind. Instead of providing a demo, I've collected some screenshots to show a little bit how we have built our solutions and which parts we use there to solve our requirements. So first of all, we have a harmonized look and feel, which you can manage through style sheets. Of course, we have the ability to add attachments, sometimes for audit evidence, but also for approval process. We add an attachment in the vendor request. It doesn't get loaded in SAP, but for journal vouchers, it does get loaded in SAP. And we have agreed on how we call and sequence and color code all the buttons just to make sure it doesn't look like a mess if you have multiple people building a solution. We also often use what is called repeating tables. A repeating tables is where you can upload a lot of data. So instead of working with one vendor, in this case, you are working with a lot of item details. You need to think of pagination to make sure your page still works and performs. And the easy thing is you can upload and download from Excel. So most requesters have a template which they fill, upload it in the form, and then process it and validate with SAP. Business rules can be managed in repeating tables in a bit of a different way. You need some JavaScripting there. It's not extremely complex, but it's slightly different than a normal form because you don't have the field only once. You have the field for multiple rows. So that requires a little bit of a tricky setup. But in the end, if you get the hang of it, it's not that complex. What we also try to do is make the screen look okay for, let's say, the 80–90% normal flow. There are always exceptions, and I've taken a screenshot of a vendor master where you, in case needed, could fill 5 bank details. In order not to complicate the form, we group those and hide those groups just to make the form remain readable. If the requester needs it, it can just open and expand that section. But if all the fields are shown on one form, it becomes a very lengthy form. So we try to group the fields in a meaningful way and open and close them depending on the needs and sometimes based on business rules. And that's also something you should keep in mind. I'll get to that later in the lessons learned. But it's important to keep in mind what you want your solution to cover. Because if you want to have it cover more, there will also be more fields on the form. And you need to balance how complex your forms get versus one form or multiple forms in the end. LOVs, list of values, we find them very useful for a few reasons. We are on Foundation, so the LOVs are still simple SharePoint lists. We use them to fine-tune the value list. We copied our SAP system from our friends of Philips. So that means in all the SAP value lists, there are hundreds of codes that are completely not relevant to us. So we use those LOVs from Foundation to filter what is relevant for us, to avoid that users pick a value that is completely nonsense. We also use it to show subsets. So you can make dependencies between those value lists. And if you know, based, for example, on the product hierarchy that you are a xenon bulb, then why should I show you HS codes of custom codes that are about signaling or halogen? If I know you're a xenon, I can filter and show you only the relevant HS codes. So that increases data quality because you avoid that users can make mistakes. Where we also use it for is because we have 2 kernels, it is easier to maintain cross-kernel value sets. So we have one generic value list on the form, but in the LOV, we can maintain the real value for the different kernels, and that is the value that the Winshuttle script will use in the end to load in SAP. So that helps us to, let's say, anonymize the 2 different kernels. And we use it to steer business rules, for example, for withholding tax that is not always needed. So instead of building a complex business rule where we hard code that, we just build an LOV. And basically the business rule says if the country is in that list, you need withholding tax, otherwise not. So that makes it easier to maintain and manage business rules by looking at those LOVs. Of course, when data gets loaded, you get all the Winshuttle logs. So we show them on the forum. That is only on the data management view. So not to bother the users with that. And of course, we can rerun scripts in case something goes wrong. That is always still possible. So then the data management team can rerun the scripts. A bit on the workflows. We have multiple workflows per solution. It depends a bit on the process where you're in. You also see on the top of the screenshot the different tabs of the different phases of the solution, of the proposal. Making the workflow, dragging and dropping the boxes is not the tricky part. And the tricky part is discussing with the business how the workflow should be. And then, yeah, dragging and dropping the boxes is the simple part. Of course, you have the happy flow, but you also need to be aware of what happens if I reject, make sure that the workflow doesn't end up in an endless loop or gets on a dead-end street. And of course, the workflow runs through the different swim lanes. You see on the left the name of those swim lanes that are the different teams involved in the process. And that is important when you design the solution, that you really think upfront which teams are involved. Because if you don't, because that steers both the solution workflow in Composer, but also the forums. Because every swim lane can have its dedicated forum with own look and feel to make sure you don't complicate with fields that are not needed for that person. But if you later, during the design, decide to change the teams involved, yeah, you almost have to restart. So the designing who is involved steers both the workflow and the forum. So that is something to really solution from the beginning. Sometimes we have a bit more complex workflows or parallel workflows because we have multiple systems. So we have one solution entering data in multiple SAP systems. Some workflows are parallel, some are sequential, and of course sequential takes more time. We have workflow steps that are manual, meaning it is routed through a business user who has to push buttons. But we also have workflow steps that are automated. For example, in Journal Voucher, loading the attachments, we do that separately because you imagine if we do 3,500 a day and we want also to do the attachments, that's going to take some time. So we delay attaching the files to SAP. And that is a workflow step that gets triggered later in a background job. And those workflow steps run hands off. So users are not bothered by it, but it is still a workflow step in the Composer solution, but not with a user action. It is with automated workflow steps. What we also do is if you have Foundation, you get all your requests in a SharePoint list. And we have added some custom fields there. That is also something you need to think of from the beginning because they need to be available in your solution. And if you want to have cross-solution fields, yeah, they need to be in all your solutions. And we added columns for reporting and traceability. So for example, first time right and urgent. What we do with first time right is we collect how often the request from the requester is good enough that we can directly start loading, or whether the requester basically didn't fill the form correctly. And with that, we regularly check, and if there are requesters who are scoring low on first time right, we use that to go back to the business and say, guys, maybe you need additional training. Why are you always making mistakes when you fill the form? It helps us to find which business team we have to reach out to improve the quality of the requests. Because yeah, having Foundation doesn't mean your requesters automatically know what to fill. It helps you offering less options, so there is less room for mistakes. But still, yeah, if requesters don't know what they're asking, they might just pick the first value in the drop down in mandatory fields and just hit submit button until it works. But that's not necessarily a guarantee for success. So we use those extra fields to focus on that and report also back to the business. So that was in a little bit of a glimpse, the key things, what we've set up. And then I want to spend some time on lessons learned, because I think that's where some more time is needed. What helped us a lot is that we had a fast learning curve with quick results. So the first solutions were built by the Winshuttle consultants from the UK. And that helped us to make the learning curve much shorter and gave immediate results. Because that's always nice, start working with a tool and later fine tune. It also helped us to get trained. We looked along, so while the Winshuttle consultants were building, we were able to check the solutions, looked what they've set up, and also ask questions on why those things were set up the way they are. And that made us more familiar with the solutions that were built and also helped us to maintain it going forward. So that really helped us get through a quick learning curve. What is really important is to understand how foundation solutions tick, let's say, how they work, and that you really understand and how to conceptually organize your solutions. Initially, we didn't really understand that discussion with the Winshuttle consultants, but working with some examples, it helped understanding the question. So for vendor, you can make one solution that manages a create and a change, or you can split it. And if you split it, it means your screens are slightly different, your workflows are slightly different. And the same is with vendor or employees. Technically, from an SAP point of view, an employee is a vendor. So you could make it one solution, you can make it two solutions. And of course, making two solutions might mean more maintenance. On the other hand, if you make it in one solution, you get a complexer solution with more complex business rules. And that is really something that you need to decide from the beginning. Because if you do that later on, you almost have to restart. It's even more complex with customer. There you have sold to, bill to, ship to, payer, and so on. And there we had lengthy discussions on to what extent do we want to combine that in one solution, to what extent do you want to split it, because sometimes a sold to is also needing bill tos. So if you split it, you burden the business maybe with multiple requests. If you combine it, you get a form of 10 pages. That is maybe also not so sexy. So really understanding how you want to organize your solutions, what works best for your business process, that is really key. And you should do that in the beginning. Because if you do that halfway, you can start redesigning your workflow and your forms. Then another thing, which is, let's say, the burden of the flexibility of Winshuttle. In Winshuttle is much more flexible as SAP. So you cannot use the excuse that SAP cannot do it. You can build whatever you want, but that's not necessarily what you should do. So yeah, Winshuttle is flexible, which is both good and bad actually. What we try to do is not wait until the solution solves all the 100% of possible cases. Because first of all, it would mean that it takes a lot of time to discuss with the business, and it takes a lot of time before there is a solution ready. And we'd rather spend that time on another solution and get there to the 80–90%. We all know the 80–20 rule. Building the last 20% of exceptions takes most of the time. And since we are probably like all companies in a capacity constraint, we want to use that capacity not to build the last 10% of exceptional situations, but use that to build the 80% of the next solution. So we go live with, let's say, 90% of the happy flow, and exceptions requesters can type in a comment box, and then the data management team picks those up and handles those through a manual load in SAP. That means not everything might be automated, but it does mean we get quicker value for money and quicker results of the automation. And of course, it avoids that you spend a whole year discussing before things are ready. And later, when time permits, we can always automate further those exceptions. I mean, it's very easy to enrich or enhance an existing solution. But we do that later. What is also key in the building part is get the business logic clear. Ideally, most is rule-based, because the more you do rule-based, the better you get your data quality, because you can manage your LOVs, you can manage that they don't choose the wrong values, you can validate if a customer and master data is in sync where needed, or cross-kernel. But the problem is that the business doesn't always know all the rules. Often we heard, yeah, this is historical, we already do this for 5 years, but if you then asked why, there wasn't really an answer. So getting the business rules clear is really key, otherwise you cannot build them in the solution. And what also was a surprise is that it is important to validate the business rules with the real data. Because often we heard from the business certain business rules, and then we queried SAP and did some Excel magic to validate that business rule with the existing data. And it turned out that, let's say, half of the existing data did not match that business rule. The problem would then be if you implement that rule in Foundation, let's say those 50% of vendors are then in a deadlock because you cannot process it through a change form unless you fix that business rule, which might not apply. So always validating the business rules with the real data is what we're currently doing, just to make sure that, yeah, we don't build rules that are actually not valid. After the building, of course, if a solution is ready, you have to govern and maintain the solution. And that is sometimes even more tricky. After the initial solutions were built by Winshuttle, they worked all fine. We tested and we all went nicely live. But we had, however, limited training on the governance part. And what we noticed, also with the Winshuttle help desk and those kind of teams, is many consultants are focused on building the solution, which is on the one hand good, but after when you're live, you also need to maintain it. And that was not really discussed on how you best govern your solutions. Foundation has a governance part where you can look at users and licenses used, but it's not really a full-blown governance area. So we are still doing certain things manual. For example, I mentioned the importance for us for those LOVs. We have LOVs that we use in multiple solutions, like a company code table. It is not easy to see which value list is used in which solutions. So if you're going to build a new solution and you're going to change something in that LOV, you have to manually check all the other solutions that use that LOV. There's no where used kind of functionality. And you manually need to check what is the impact. So it is not always easy to find back after, and we have now 4 or 5 solutions running, so it starts to get a bit complex. We manually have to have Excels linked to Sharepoint where and some queries from the SQL table from Foundation, where you start querying which value lists are used where to keep that governance in mind and have control on that. Also, user management is a little bit tricky. That's partly because Winshuttle is based, at least the Foundation part, on Sharepoint. On the one hand, Sharepoint is nice, but it also means that it's a little bit of a complex user management. If we add users, of course, they need a Winshuttle role. They need to be added in a Winshuttle Sharepoint group, otherwise they cannot go to the libraries and the lists. They need a license, they need SAP authorization. Optionally, you can set up some policies in Winshuttle. So that makes it quite a step to add users. And also, if we offboard users, we have to be careful where to remove them. And if they need extra solutions, they don't need a new license, but they do need Winshuttle Sharepoint groups to be added. And that is not really with a click of a button visible in Winshuttle governance where users are set up. It's a bit in the Sharepoint part, it's a bit in the license part, it's a bit of a mixed bag, so that makes it a bit complicated. And what we also learned, but that's more process-wise, because Winshuttle is easy to build, it feels as a burden to make documentation because it almost takes us the same amount of time to document than to build. And then it's very tempting to only build and not document. But then later, if you have to change your solution and there's no documentation, then you have no clue what you're changing, and that makes it very, very difficult to maintain. So it's really something that we need to organize in our processes to make sure that we stay tight on our documentation. Otherwise, we constantly have to re-engineer and debug what we've built to find out why a business rule might not have been working anymore. Some, what I call tricky elements, archiving. For example, with journal vouchers, but also for vendors, we get in the so many requests that you run out of limits with SharePoint. There is an archiving solution, and it took a little bit of tweaking and help from Winshuttle support to get that in the end fully working. That also had to do a little bit with the version, so we upgraded, but still it was a little bit of a trick to get that working. It now works, so that's fine. But it is not that you just in your forum put on the tick archiving and it magically works. So that was a bit of a tricky element to get working. What is also a little bit challenging is the Power BI reporting. You've sometimes seen in those nice Lumileds web access, you see the same nice slide with the fancy Power BI reporting. It works, but it's not a click of a button. So it looks very easy, but it's not so easy to set up. Connecting to the foundation database is not the difficult part, but then finding the tables, taking the correct data out of the tables, add your own metrics on top. It took us quite some time to build. I must say that's also because we didn't know Power BI. So along the way, we learned Power BI. So that was, of course, also part of the learning curve. But we also often had to raise tickets to Winshuttle support to get clarity on which tables we need for what. The good thing is we always got a very quick response. So that's also the third item here on the slide. Use Winshuttle support. I mean, you're paying for it as part of the license. Those guys know the tools inside out. And next to the community that Mark already referred to, there's also, of course, the Winshuttle support team. And we often reach out to them if we get stuck with Java and repeating table, or with archiving, or with the Power BI reporting. Reach out to those guys. They are there. You pay for them, so you better use them. And our experience, we get very quick results, and that helps us continue in building our solutions. So that that is something we find very useful. Then a bit on our plans for the future. So what is still ahead of us? More and more solving cross-kernel solutions. We are working on HS classifications for customs, where we plan to make very simple forums for the users and make sure that we load in SAP. What we're also going to do there is that we store data in Winshuttle, which we cannot store in SAP yet. Because HS codes are country specific, so they need to be loaded on the plant. But we want to classify it only once. So we're planning to store the data in Winshuttle as a placeholder. And as soon as the plant extension is there, we're going to automatically query that and load it in SAP. What we're also going to investigate is where Winshuttle can help with direct delivery flows. So nothing to do with master data, but we have direct delivery flows that are cross-kernel. And SAP doesn't like that so much because it tends to work with delivering plant, which doesn't work if it's cross-kernel. So what we're going to investigate later this year, if Winshuttle can hold the direct delivery data that both kernels need, and then orchestrate the process across the both kernels. And if there is a change, that the requester finds the order in Winshuttle, makes the change, and then Winshuttle makes sure that both systems are kept in sync. So where Winshuttle is in the beginning aimed for master data, we're also going to investigate if we can use it for direct delivery, which is probably going to be not so straightforward, but I think it should work. And instead of having all kind of EDI where, let's say, the final ship to and that kind of information gets lost, we envision that we should be able to keep that data in foundation and build that cross-kernel direct delivery flow. And to just give you a bit of an example on that flow, because we have global factories and sales organizations, we have more and more complex business setup. We have direct delivery flows that cross the kernel twice. So it ping-pongs between kernels 2-3 times. And we need a 25-slide deck to explain to the business how complex it are. But in the end, it is all rule-based, based only on 3 inputs. So if we know 3 inputs, basically, we can conclude all the 50, 60 business rules. So why not automate them? Because automation can reduce business risk. The consequence could be that the business might even less understand the process that they're running, because yeah, if you automate it, the business users don't need to know in all the details what they're doing. But yeah, if you have to balance to make your users know what they're doing or reduce the risk by making your solution rule-based, we are tempted to choose for reduce the risk and automate where possible. And to close off, to keep it a bit light, there was a nice movie passing by on LinkedIn, and I think it resembles why we think in Luminance that automate rule-based processes helps more than relying on trained business users. So yeah, to wrap up before I start the movie, we use multiple versions of Winshuttle, sometimes Excel, sometimes Foundation, simple solutions, complex solutions. Make sure your business rules are known. Business doesn't always have them. So yeah, you have to really do the 5 times why and validate with the real data. And we have some dedicated folks building that because yeah, you really need to know SAP, how SAP ticks, how Foundation works to build the proper solutions. And like Jamie said, if there are questions, you can type them in the chat box and then we can later get back to them. So with that, I'm handing it back to you, Jamie.
Yes, thanks, Gerben. Let me check, because I will share my presentation and turn on my camera. So let's start with showing you all my presentation. So that's one. And now I want to, oh, sorry. I will do it the other way around. I will first start my video. I know how that works, so that's one. Then I will share my screen with the presentation. That's this one. So over there. And then this one. Voila. So hopefully you will all see my slide with the Work Winshuttle User Group agenda. So now, first of all, thanks, Mark, and especially thanks to Gerben as a Winshuttle customer. And it's always a sort of challenge to find someone to present their way of working within Winshuttle in the user group, because not everybody likes to present. So Gerben, we were really happy that you showed what Lumileds is doing within Winshuttle. Mark and Gerben will also stay there until the end of the morning. So if you have some questions, you can also answer. They can also answer those on the end of the day. And I saw some questions in the chat box. So Gerben will also answer those after the knowledge sessions. So we will have a short break at within some minutes until 10:15. So you can grab a cup of coffee or so. And then it's quite important that at 10:15, the first knowledge session will start automatically. And what that means is that we have 5 knowledge sessions, and you can follow 3 out of the 5 sessions, but you have to go to those sessions by yourself. So the consultant and his moderator are in the breakout room, and you can choose which of the 5 breakout rooms you want to follow. And we have a request, if not everybody wants to go to session 1 or 2 in the beginning, because then in the first part we have 80 people in session 1 and 0 in session 5. So if you just want to make a mix out of it, so please feel free to follow, I don't know, session 3 first or session 5. So what you want, so that we have a mix and that we not have everybody in the first room in the first session. So you all did get an email with the knowledge sessions, but I will just show you them again. If you want, you can switch. So if you gave up yourself for 3 other knowledge sessions and you want to follow, for example, Guido's session instead of Joost, or the other way around, please feel free, because you can just click on the breakout session which you like. So in room 1, there's Joost Hoogvorst, and he prepared a Winshuttle Evolve demo, but then a combination with using Winshuttle Studio, so with Excel. In room 2, we have Guido Rosmeulen. That's a more technical session, and everybody knows that Guido is one of our really technical guys, so that's not a surprise. And he will show you how to maintain business partners in S/4HANA via Winshuttle Direct. In room 3, we have Roy Oppetveld, and he will present you a Winshuttle Evolve workflow demonstration. So for the people who didn't know that yet, or were in the session later and didn't follow the session for Mark Hallam, Evolve is the new version of Winshuttle Foundation. Then in room 4, we have Martijn Borgman, and he will present you the importance of good data management or good user governance. And then in the last room, room 5, we have Jan van Asselonk, and he will show you a Winshuttle Studio round trip. So that's a combination of Winshuttle Query and the Winshuttle Transaction module for your data maintenance. So those are the time frames for the 3 different sessions. So as I already explained, we will have a short break within some minutes. And then at 10:15, we will start with the first knowledge session. That session will end automatically after 30 minutes, so at 10:45. You will see a small clock in your screen counting back from 60 seconds until 0. And then everybody will throw out of the knowledge session, and you will come back in this main room where you are right now. And then you can choose immediately the next session, so knowledge session 2. In the different knowledge sessions, we have moderators. So if you have a technical Zoom question, you can just ask your question in that specific knowledge session to the moderator. And Silke, she's the person behind the help desk chat. She is in this main room. So you can also ask us questions in this main room if you have problems with going to a specific knowledge session. So also for the knowledge sessions, please type in your questions in the chat box. And it depends per session. If a consultant has some time left in the end, then he can decide to answer those questions directly. If there is no time, we will collect those questions and we will also answer those at 11:45 at the end of the three knowledge sessions. Let me check on my notes if I forgot something really important to tell you. No. So what I will do, I will go back to this slide. So we will start the break right now until 10:15. And then, as I said, the first breakout session will start. And important to know, you can find the breakout rooms in your taskbar below. You can see breakout room 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you can choose one of those sessions to start, and you can follow 3 out of 5 sessions. So have a nice coffee break, and then we will see you all back in the knowledge sessions at 10:15. So everyone's back from the different breakout sessions. So hopefully all the sessions were good. During those different sessions, we did get different questions. So I wrote those down. Some of them maybe are a bit too complex. So we will answer those afterwards one-on-one. We do have 15 minutes left. So if someone wants to ask a question right now, he can just unmute himself, no problem. And you can answer the question to Mark Hallam, Gerben, or one of the consultants directly, no problem. And otherwise, I will just start with the question list, with a question to the person who will receive the question to put on your camera. So the first question was in the session from Mark Hallam. Let me go to the list. It was Mark, it's a question for you from Ed Minders. How do you think about using a PIM solution to solve the cross-channel where PIM is the central database? Is that something which you can answer right now? I don't know if you're still there.
Yeah, I'm still here, and I think it is certainly something that can potentially address that challenge. It depends on how you're using your data and how you're mastering data. Essentially, where the PIM solution comes into strength is if you have multiple data sources, not just your ERP system or your SAP system, multiple data sources feeding into our MDM platform for PIM, and you can leverage it in a multitude of different ways. I think if you have a particular use case that you'd like to explore, I think it's probably better for us to dig into a technical demo or a technical deep dive to understand just how you're using it. But yes, I think it pretty much can do that.
Okay. Thanks, Mark. If you have any questions about that, Ed, then you know where you can find us. So please feel free. Another question which we've got, and I wrote it down, is also for you, Mark. If there is already a possibility to do an upgrade from Foundation to Evolve, and if Evolve is still using SharePoint as a platform.
Yes, you can. There is a migration path from Foundation to Evolve, so you can move to it. It is a new technology. There is no SharePoint in Evolve, so that is viewed as a positive for some folks, where they have to have an extra SharePoint footprint that they will no longer need. Things to consider as you move from the Foundation platform to the Evolve platform is it'll be a new solution, so you'll have to rebuild some of the solutions that you have in your systems. We are developing migration tools to help with that. But it really depends on the complexity of your workflows and how you're currently constructing your workflows. And if we take away the SharePoint components, so SharePoint lists and things like that, those will change with the new Evolve technology. So they'll be easier to use and essentially more efficient and more effective in that respect. So it's a newer technology. So it will be a point in time where you kind of run your Foundation solution, implement the Evolve solution, and build and reconfigure your solutions in a new modern environment. And it's a good point in time to kind of really challenge your thinking and the experience as to how you're going to configure the new solutions in the Evolve platform. So a lot of folks have essentially used the learning on the Foundation platform and and made some changes in the way they've done it. Some folks have essentially just replicated without the SharePoint functionality, obviously, the solutions in the Evolve platform for a more efficient and a more effective way of moving. So there's a lot of new functionality, and the answer is yes, you can upgrade, and no, there is no SharePoint in the Evolve platform.
Okay, great, thanks. Gerben, there is also a question for you. If you have any idea how many people are using Winshuttle in the organization right now?
Yeah, we could look at the license count, but I think for vendors and for vendors, it's close to 100. It's the procurement and the commodity teams who are approving, finance is requesting. In finance for journal vouchers, I think it's also close to 100 users. So we have a few hundred users in general using Winshuttle, and of course the data management team are the heavy users.
Okay, thanks. Then I did get a good question, because as I said in the beginning, a lot of people already know me as like the Winshuttle face in the Netherlands, but we did get the question if there is also a Winshuttle contact in Belgium, and yes, there is. So Yassine, yeah, it's up to you to tell everybody who you are and what you are doing within Ctac.
Yes, I recently started with working with Ctac in Winshuttle. So for the Belgian companies and persons, I'm your point of contact, and I'm very glad and very happy to be part of this team. And we will help you fully with all your questions. And I hope also that you did enjoy the session of today.
Okay, thanks. The most technical question of the day. No, how is Chris doing? Because normally Chris is one of the presenters at the user group, so I think someone missed Chris. So I don't know if Chris is still there.
Yeah, I am. Hi, everybody.
And it wasn't me, Chris, who asked that question, Joost.
No.
Yeah, thanks, Joost. Yeah, I'm doing fine. Thanks, everybody. Nice to be here. I've really enjoyed being on the call today. I've attended a number of the sessions and found them really helpful. So thanks to the Ctac guys for running those and making them really interesting. So yeah, I've certainly enjoyed it.
Great. Another question about Evolve. So maybe it's easy if you answer that question, Mark. What's the benefit of using Evolve instead of a SharePoint workflow?
Oh, one is you don't have to have SharePoint. I think and that is, I'm sorry, it's a bit of a controversial answer. Some folks really enjoy SharePoint, and there's a lot of benefit to SharePoint, and it does have its benefits. I think there's the Office 365 version, which is limited in its capability in how you manage data. But the Evolve platform is essentially designed for business users to capture, move, validate in a web form type scenario data through an organization at an enterprise level. It can handle very complex situations where, for example, if you're setting up a material master in SAP, that can be quite complex. So if you think of your core basic data and then all your as your parent data and all the child components underneath that, your bombs and your writings and your PIRs, all of that data is pretty complex to set up and manage. And the Evolve platform is designed specifically for those complex data-intensive strategic business processes that you will run in your environment. And SharePoint is not. So at a strategic level, the Evolve platform is designed for those particular use cases. So it is a designed for purpose platform versus SharePoint, which is not. It also has the deeper SAP certified integration that we experience, and it is important in these types of environments where you're connecting to SAP in and out of SAP at a regular level, and you have high volumes of data going into SAP as well. So it's a more strategic platform that is designed for the purpose.
Okay, thanks. Joost, I have a question which came out of your session. Does everyone in the flow need to have a Winshuttle license, including the originator? Question mark.
Yes, everybody needs. If you want to participate in a flow, you need to have a Winshuttle Evolve license, and depending on what you require to do, there's there are different licenses with different pricing strategies behind that to participate in the Evolve workflow. And maybe Jamie, you can elaborate on the types of licenses that we use.
Yeah, so the license structure within Evolve is a bit different than in Studio, because in Evolve you do have, or 9 out of the 10 times, you do have more users than you have in Studio. So if you just want to have a chat about the different license types, then just give me a sign and I will explain you how the license structure in Evolve would look like. And as Gerben has mentioned, within Lumileds, a lot, like hundreds of people are using the solution. So you can imagine that the license structure is a bit different. Then there was a question which I can answer by myself. The question if there are also local consultants for example, onboarding on foundational Evolve. And yes, we have, of course, because we are the Winshuttle partner in the Netherlands and in Belgium. So the consultants who organize the breakout sessions today, they are also our Winshuttle consultants, so they can help you with your Winshuttle projects. And we have around 12, 13 consultants, so a lot of internal Winshuttle knowledge. So now in this Corona period of time, it's a bit different, of course, but normally we can just go on site and help you with your projects. So, let me check, because I also saw a question, Joost, that was also in your session. Was it ever investigated to make a combination between Winshuttle and Microsoft Automate/Flow? And that's a question from Margreet, and she means Evolve connection with Microsoft to SAP.
I think Microsoft Automate and Flow, those are apps available on Office 365, which allow you to create a set of questions, and if answered, they will populate an Excel sheet. So, and there's a bit of workflow functionality behind it. I investigated the use of that in combination with Foundation. And the idea was then to have a Excel sheet populated by using MS Automate and Flow, and then place that Excel sheet on SharePoint to be later to be picked up by Foundation itself. As Evolve does not use SharePoint anymore, I do not know whether this functionality will still work. I haven't tried it out yet. Maybe Mark can help answering that particular question.
Sadly, I'm not as technical as you just, but I think from an Evolve standpoint, we do have the Digital Access API, and there's a potential that we could explore if the data you're creating and collecting could then be fed in and trigger an Evolve workflow, solution workflow that then follows through the organization. So it's something we can explore, but I haven't had personal experience, and I'm sure I can find a consultant within Winshuttle.
Same for me at this moment in time. So, okay, yeah.
So I see a question on the chat from Ed Minders. I think that I leave that one also up to you, Mark. Is performance, so Evolve versus SharePoint, a selling point?
Yes, I think it is. You know, again, it's designed for a particular purpose technology, and SharePoint does have its constraints from a performance standpoint, from how it connects to SAP and how it collects data and moves data around the organization. Evolve is built as a strategic platform for data management at an enterprise level. And the collection, movement, validation of data from SAP is something that Sharepoint doesn't natively have. And I think you'll find that if you compare a complex solution like for like, Evolve is designed for that particular purpose in mind. So it will have a performance advantage that is significant compared to the Sharepoint side of things, as well as an overhead of maintenance and management and setup and configuration. It's designed for that purpose. It's designed for non-technical business users to be able to set up and configure and manage these types of solutions. And SharePoint isn't, it doesn't have that ease of use in terms of having to set up all the peripheral connections and back-end plumbing to SAP. So it's a more complex coming together of technologies that does work in some cases, but Evolve is specifically designed at an enterprise level for that particular process or that particular discipline of managing your data into and out of SAP and around your organization. So Ed, I think it is a very significant improvement in performance.
Okay, clear answer, thanks. So it's 12 o'clock, so officially it's the end of the event. We do have some more questions from the breakout sessions. So what we will do, those questions will go to the consultants who organized the different knowledge sessions, and they will answer the questions one-on-one to the persons who asked those. If you have some questions afterwards, then please feel free to contact me or Yassine for Winshuttle Belgium. And now I was really happy to have so much people in this remote user group, and we will have another user group after the summer, and fingers crossed it will be on site again, and if not, then we will run a remote session again. So thanks everybody for joining the session. Have a nice day. Please be careful with still the snow outside, and talk to you soon. Ciao, ciao.
Thanks, Jamie. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Jamie. Bye.